Welcome to Mythic Muscle, the podcast where we delve into the fascinating worlds of fitness and folklore. I'm your host, Benjamin Cloud, and in each episode, we'll explore the myths, legends, and stories from cultures around the world and see how they intersect with the world of fitness. What I aim to do is provide a captivating, dramatic retelling and set you on your way to a healthier version of yourself. As a powerlifter and a bodybuilder with a deep interest in mythology and folklore, I've always been intrigued by the ways that ancient cultures viewed strength, power, and the human body. In each episode, I'll take you on a journey through a different mythological tale or figure, exploring its literary nature and its relevance to modern fitness culture. And to really bring the story to life, I'll also present a specialized workout program that's inspired by the mythological themes we discuss. So whether you're a fitness enthusiast looking for some new workout ideas, a mythology buff curious about the deeper meanings behind these tales, or just someone who loves a good story, this podcast is for you. Join me on this journey of discovery, and let's explore the intersection of fitness and folklore together. Sisyphus, the Ceaseless, First King of Ephyra, progeny of Prometheus. Sisyphus' story is as difficult to pin down as his name is to pronounce. As with many myths of days past, the exact origin is a little rocky. That was a brutal pun, I understand, and I will not be apologizing. With that in mind, I'll be presenting the version of Sisyphus I believe to be most intriguing, and the version that we can glean the most from both philosophically and physiologically. If you speak the name Sisyphus, most can tell you of the man rolling the rock, but almost none can tell you what crime he committed to be so recognized by his punishment. I think it's a shame, because the most interesting aspect of Sisyphus' story has next to nothing to do with his eventual punishment. Allow me to take you to the glinting coastline of Greece. Imagine the warm sunlight, that salty, cool coastal breeze, and the gentle bobbing of the longboats on the waves. You can picture it, can't you? The beauty of that Grecian coast. But let me take you further, to a kingdom nestled into a cove where the Ionian and Aegean seas kiss. A small village lies here. The houses dot the beach following the natural curve of the shore break. On the horizon, just south, immense, towering mountains filled with gilded green grass and capped with snow silhouette the fading sunlight, which reflects hazily off the calm tide. This is Sisyphus' site, his village soon to be kingdom of untold splendor. Sisyphus' ambition rivaled his wit, and those with wit and ambition in equal measure are often among the most dangerous folk. The first king of Ephyra would be no exception. He set to task the young prince, a statesman by trade, excelled in logistics, far more than most of his age and perhaps more than the finest that Greece ever brought to the fore. Sisyphus would sow the land, toiling day in, day out. Well, he commanded his servants to do so while he pontificated upon commerce building. Ephyra is bound by great hills and an expanse of ocean. Trade routes would need to be established and terraforming was a must. So Sisyphus set out to build roads through the hillside, and made relations with Grecian sailors and merchants. It wouldn't be long before Sisyphus had turned Ephyra into a city of gratuitous trade and prosperity. His trade routes flourished, the best Greece had ever seen. But the people of Ephyra saw little of the great wealth that Sisyphus was building. Sisyphus, in his timeless wisdom, knew he must appease his subjects or else find himself in the public's disfavor. A coup was simply not in the cards, especially when Sisyphus was the dealer. And deal he did. He would order improvements on the village's infrastructure through architectural work, housing, and charting more land to be cultivated. All the while he had built himself a keep, garish and demonstrative of his nature. It was luxuriously furnished, but brutally pragmatic and almost cold. It seemed to speak that the person who calls this keep his home is one of calculative, cunning stature. Tall pillars were erected, like those of the Parthenon. To further separate Sisyphus from his people, he could afford the niceties and symbols of wealth. Yet the people of Ephyra would not rebel, plot a coup, or engage in any form of mutiny. They still benefited from Sisyphus' remarkable intelligence and logistical strength. Of course, Sisyphus knew that loosening the bridle here and there produces an obedient stallion. Too loose, and the stallion becomes uncontrollable. Too tight, and the stallion's pain will overwhelm any logical action. This was Sisyphus's gift and curse. He was a brilliant Machiavellian manipulator. He could pull levers and turn gears that most would shy away from. He kept his conscience clean by convincing himself he was setting his erudite mind to a good cause. Ephyra was flourishing, and so he was acting virtuously. The ends justify the means for Sisyphus. He would grow his wealth, he would grow his kingdom, and anything that might get in the way of it, he would eradicate. And anything that would see him furthered in his goals, he would indulge. Indulgence through eradication. Now this, Sisyphus savored. Xenia, or guest obligations, was a cultural marker of ancient Greece. In essence, it is a rule of hospitality that should a stranger come to your keep, you should welcome them with gifts, drink, food, and merriment. Conceptually, if you abided by Xenia, your gifts would not go unrewarded. It was a reciprocal act. Say a traveler from Crete wound up at your doorstep during a great display of Zeus's fury, you would welcome the traveler in from the raging storm, feed and bed them, and in the morning they would leave. Later, you would receive a gift from the Crete traveler, or perhaps a favor would be offered. This reciprocity was a moral obligation for the Greeks, and Sisyphus counted himself among the morally obligated. And yet, Sisyphus found issue with any moral obligation that might impede upon his goals as a ruler. Many a traveler found Sisyphus's keep step. Many a traveler would not make it to the morning after. Sisyphus had a penchant for fulfilling only the first portion of Xenia. To invite the stranger in, but to treat them hospitably? No. Not for Sisyphus. Ephyra's first king would kill those strangers, steal from them their personal effects, and summarily develop a reputation. Sisyphus was powerful, and not to be trifled with. He would continue to rule his people with an iron fist, loosening and tightening the bridle at whim. But why? Why the scheming, the killing, and the hegemonistic endeavors? Sisyphus may boast a great intelligence and be logically wise, but he is still a man, and men can be jealous, ruthless, vicious things. Sisyphus's brother Salmoneus was the cause and the target of Sisyphus's less flattering aspects. See, Salmoneus also fancied himself the ruler of a city named Salmoné. I wonder where he got the name. And Salmoné was prosperous as well, a rival city-state to Ephyra. Sisyphus would not be outdone by his brother, and began to scheme his death. If Sisyphus outright killed Salmoneus, then he would risk outright war between the two city-states, assuring their mutual destruction. If he covertly hired assassins, well, there'd be no guarantee they wouldn't cut and run. If instead he chose diplomacy, it doesn't matter, Sisyphus had no interest in diplomacy, only supremacy. But feigning diplomacy is a route to supremacy. Sisyphus rode to the famed Oracle of Delphi looking for an answer to his macabre predicament without bringing ruin upon his kingdom. The Oracle of Delphi suggested a surreptitious route. Sisyphus should seduce his niece Tyro, and in doing so, the Oracle, with their precognitive ability, predicted Tyro would have 2 boys. Those 2 boys would go on to kill Salmoneus and consequently would destroy the kingdom of Salmoné. The people of Salmoné would flee and find themselves subjects of Sisyphus. 2 birds, 1 stone. The rock puns will not cease. So Sisyphus sent for Tyro to come join him in a great banquet. During that time, he would seduce the young woman, take her to bed, and 9 months later, both babies would be born. There is one character in this story who I've yet to mention, and she happens to be perhaps the most important of all the characters yet. Merope, Sisyphus's wife, knew of Sisyphus's plot to rid Salmoné of its ruler, and she knew exactly how he intended to do so. Merope was one of the Pleiades, a daughter of the Titan Atlas and the sea nymph Pleione. She was brutally intelligent in her own right, and yet she is seen as the least heavenly of all the Pleiades due to her marrying a mortal instead of a god. Her love for Sisyphus was intense and overwhelming, and certainly gives credence to that saying of, behind every great man is an even greater woman. So why she took the following course of action, I haven't the slightest clue. Merope told Tyro of Sisyphus's plot, that his feigned romantic interest in her was false, that he had no interest in uniting their 2 families, but instead he sought to overthrow his brother. Tyro was infuriated, and in her naive heartbreak, disavowed Sisyphus in full. She would suffocate her own 2 sons in their crib. They would never see that dark prophecy fulfilled. Sisyphus cared little for the boys, but cared greatly for Tyro's impact on the prophecy. Yet he couldn't kill the girl. He still feared an open war between Salmoné and Ephyra. He would need something else that could be used to assert himself above his brother Salmoneus. Sisyphus toiled for years, all the while watching his life pass him by, until a thought struck him, one that would inevitably beget his grave punishment. Zeus, as we've stated in earlier episodes, was painfully promiscuous. He saw consent as a feckless myth, and of course, as the god of all gods, he could do as he wished. This caused him and those beneath him, physically and metaphorically, great strife, as his lust was endless and indiscriminate. One such target of his lechery was Aegina, an island nymph born of the river god Sisyphus. The next part is deeply disturbing, so feel free to skip a few seconds. Zeus must have enjoyed his time with Aegina so greatly that he hid her away, binding her to an island off the coast of Attica so that he might have her when he pleased. Sisyphus had seen an enormous bird carrying a maiden across the sea, bearing just shy of Attica. He figured that he knew what this oddity was and decided to take action. He sought out Asopus and guided him toward the direction of Aegina in exchange for a boon of the river god. Asopus, caring greatly for his daughter, agreed to any clause if it meant he could see his daughter safe once more. When Sisyphus returned to Ephyra, he saw the fruits of his labor. A great spring had opened near the keep, providing clean water to his people and fertilizing the land to immense proportions. With this, he thought, he could acquire wealth so great that he could force Salmoneus to be his subject. Except there lay one teensy tiny issue. Zeus got really pissed. While it isn't particularly hard to do that, it should be noted that Xenia was a ritual within Zeus's domain. So not only had Sisyphus wronged him by routinely corrupting the ritual, but now he had given away one of Zeus's most coveted secrets. Zeus called forth Thanatos, the god of death, and set him to task. Thanatos, in his beautiful pallor, outstretched his jet-black wings, reminiscent of a raven's down, and cast himself to Mount Olympus's winds. Down he spiraled, careening over mountains and gliding through bountiful Grecian valleys, until he found himself at the threshold of Sisyphus's keep. Death's touch is often subtle. While the execution of means mightn't be so gentle, the passage always is. This is Thanatos' doing. He had a great understanding for mortals and their fear, seeking to assuage it at their most frightened moments. Thanatos knew what he carried with him. His role as a death dealer was well known, and rituals were often sung in piety to the god of death. These funerary rites were an immensely important part of Greek culture, and to not perform them was akin to sacrilege. Soft footsteps, nearly imperceptible, just like the slowly lowering temperatures surrounding the keep, echoed through the great halls. Thanatos came upon Sisyphus at his banquet table, almost prepared for what was to come. Sisyphus asked Thanatos why he had come, and not Charon, whose job it was to ferry souls to Hades. Thanatos merely replied that it was of no consequence, the result would be the same. He brandished the length of chain he uses to shackle souls to Tartarus, and solemnly stepped towards Sisyphus. But Sisyphus, as I stated before, has ambition and wit in equal measure. The king asked Thanatos to demonstrate how the chains work, how he might have to wear them for the rest of his existence. Thanatos, being a compassionate soul, knowing the outcome of the conversation, acquiesced to Sisyphus's request. As Thanatos had begun to don the chains, Sisyphus slammed the manacles shut over the death god's hands, and the weight of the silvery links bore Thanatos to the floor. Sisyphus fled to his wife, stating that he hadn't long, but that she must not perform the funerary rites when he inevitably died. Merope, aghast at the statement Sisyphus was making, simply agreed without processing. It wouldn't be long until the cycle of life and death was completely upended. Ares was first to take note, as people no longer died when he killed them, and typically Ares gets really freaking mad about that type of thing. So Ares, being the meathead that he is, I can relate, stormed into Zeus's throne room and asked why death was turned off. Zeus shrugged, before recognizing what Ares had meant. Thanatos wasn't fulfilling his duty, and that is both unacceptable and highly unusual. And so he commanded Ares, god of war, violence, bloodshed, and all things militaristic, to find Sisyphus and release Thanatos. If he found Sisyphus, he was to drag him by his neck to Thanatos so that he might be punished to the greatest degree possible. Ares smiled at the request, delighted by the thought of overpowering the mortal king. Quickly, Ares made his way to Ephyra. Almost immediately, he found Sisyphus and asked where Thanatos was held. Sisyphus, not really a match for war incarnate, allegedly pissed himself and then guided Ares to his keep. There, Ares hacked away Thanatos' chains with his sword and left, satisfied that death could do his duty. Thanatos, understanding and empathetic as always, sent a glance at Sisyphus, and Sisyphus knew that this was his end. Yet scheming is just what Sisyphus does. When Sisyphus got to Hades, he begged for an audience. Hades, lonely, bored, and equally as compassionate as Thanatos, granted Sisyphus said audience. He stormed up the steps leading to Hades' throne, the souls of the dead reaching out to Sisyphus, spectral claws grasping at him from beneath the bridge. Hades cocked an eyebrow. Rage is not an emotion often displayed in his realm, and perhaps his curiosity got the best of him. But he heard Sisyphus out. Sisyphus demanded of Hades to release him for one singular day to punish his wife for not performing the funerary rites. Clearly, this is an affront to both of them. Hades has rejected an offering, and Sisyphus is denied his peaceful slumber. Hades squinted, probably, and took measure of Sisyphus, allowing him 24 hours to do what he pleased, just as long as he convinced Merope to commit to the funerary rites by the end of it. Sisyphus thanked Hades and returned to the surface, where he immediately found his wife and pleaded with her to leave Ephyra. See, shockingly, Sisyphus really didn't want to die. And hey, he cheated death once, he could probably do it again. The pair fled into the Grecian countryside where, surprisingly, Sisyphus lived out the rest of his days. Some nights he watched Thanatos fly overhead, the ebony wings capturing the moonlight and cloaking the area below him in deep shadow. Other nights he enjoyed his wife and the sounds of the waves crashing upon the rocky shores. But Sisyphus knew this was a slippery slope. Like I said, not going to stop with the puns. For the longer he evaded Thanatos, the greater his crime would be. And as he grew older, he grew wiser. He had come to be a man of endless affection and love for his wife. He admired greatly the natural beauty that Greece had to offer. He would find comfort in the songbirds lilting their melodies through the forests, the rainstorms bearing down upon the canopies of the zakynthos trees, and the gentle humming of his wife as she plucked olives off their branches. In all his conquesting, his ruthlessness and unempathetic ruling, he hadn't stopped to appreciate the gifts he had been given, and for a moment in this peaceful enjoyment of all that was around him, his scheming had stopped. And unfortunately for Sisyphus, his guard fell too. Hermes, the messenger god and psychopomp of Hades, whose job it was to lead the dead to their rightful place in the afterlife, caught up to the relaxed Sisyphus. Perhaps it was satisfaction, unlikely as it is for someone of Sisyphus's nature, that led him to take Hermes' hand. Or maybe it was a quick calculation that summed up the futility of Sisyphus attempting to once again thwart death. That part is up for you to interpret, but for Sisyphus, it wouldn't matter. The punishment for deceiving Hades and Thanatos, for disobeying Zeus, and for disallowing Ares to whack stuff really hard until it didn't move anymore, would be in line with his progenitor Prometheus's punishment. Zeus personally carried Sisyphus to the summit of the tallest peak in Tartarus, the mountainous region of Hades known to be impossibly hot at its floor and ineffably frigid at its ceiling, and set before him a boulder twice his height and weight. Zeus gave him but one word: push. And so began the infamous punishment of Sisyphus, to forever push a boulder up a mountain only for it to become too heavy at the top, inevitably rolling back down, stopping exactly at the summit. Sisyphus toils infinitely. As he grows stronger, the boulder grows heavier, yet he refuses to stop pushing it. He will never yield because despite his punishment, in a way, he's still cheating death. From here, I'd recommend finishing this episode out and then immediately checking out Mythic Mental Mondays Episode 2, The Myth of Sisyphus, where I cover Albert Camus' interpretation of Sisyphus's punishment. It's good stuff, you won't be lost, and I think it's hugely inspirational. For now, let's get into some fitness. Sisyphus sadly won't be joining us as he's been, Damn. I think I ran out of rock puns. Let me see what I can dig up. Alright, Sisyphus's myth isn't all that telling fitness-wise. During his life, he doesn't really do any crazy feats of strength or anything like that, but, just like he's most known for it, his punishment is something we can really dig into. I didn't intend for that to be a pun because I just used it a second ago, but I'll just rock with it, I guess. Let's talk shop. What would it take to roll a rock up a hill? I'd say tons of core strength, a solid foundation of hamstrings to find purchase on the ground, and quads to push. Gonna need crazy grip strength to keep the boulder moving in the right direction, and definitely a bit of triceps and shoulders to assist the legs in pushing. Core, quads, hamstrings, grip, triceps, and shoulders. Oh, and calves, of course. Editor, insert joke about not training calves here, please. Well, this is kinda weird, isn't it? Typically for hypertrophy, you'd want to isolate these muscles. Sure, core, quads, and hamstrings go together relatively easily. Grip and triceps don't pair super well here, and obviously tricep and shoulder work doesn't really cross over much with leg training, so what do? It just so happens that there are a couple of niche exercises that use all of these muscles simultaneously, and are effective to boot. Instead of traditional mythic muscle breakdown of exercise 1, 2, 3, I'm going to introduce something new. Here's the Sisyphean circuit. Circuit-style training is not terribly popular anymore, and I think a big reason for this is that it does a whole bunch of things just fine, but it doesn't excel in any one thing specifically. But I really love experimenting in the gym, and trying things out that have been disavowed on social media. Sometimes it's alright to just have fun in the gym. Slightly less effective, slightly less focused exercise is still exercise, and some exercise is better than no exercise, provided it doesn't cause injuries or fatigue to an unending degree. Let's get into what makes up our Sisyphean circuit. The first tenet of circuit training is that each exercise is performed one set after the next with little to no rest. The second tenet of circuit training is, well, I guess it's really only that one, so... Anyway, exercise number 1. The sled push. The sled push is really fun and completely thematic with this episode. I think it's the closest thing to Sisyphus' punishment that I can legally prescribe without getting put on a list. This is our approach. Load the sled up with a decent weight. I'd say enough that you can still sprint, but not enough that it doesn't feel like you're doing anything but sprinting. Instead of keeping your hands close to your body, extend them. This forces your triceps to engage more and mimics Sisyphus pushing the boulder. What this will also inherently do is push your body lower to the floor, which will force you to drive harder with your quads. You're going to push with everything you've got for 20 yards, then you're going to push it back to the start. This is our boulder falling back down the mountain. Follow this up with exercise number 2. The sled push, but an overcoming isometric. While this technically could be seen as the same exercise as the first, it really isn't. Let me explain. What you're going to do here is load the sled up with so much weight that you cannot physically move the sled. For example, if you were sprinting with a plate on the sled and you'd be able to slowly push the sled with 3 plates, slap 5 to 6 plates on. Push with everything you have against the sled for 30 seconds, really strain with everything you've got, and then let your body go slack, relax for 10 seconds, and push again for 30. Here's what we're doing with this. If you've been in the gym for a while, or you're an athlete who needs a lot of power to properly perform in your sport, you've definitely heard of or performed an overcoming isometric. This technique is exceptionally good at recruiting motor units, which is super stimulating for your nervous system. It's not often in training that you get to perform anything with maximum effort and minimal muscular impact. While you won't be growing a ton of muscle from overcoming isometrics, you will be generating power, because most of your power comes from telling your body that you need it, and the only way to do that is to do something that requires your maximum effort, thus telling your body to provide its maximum support. You can implement overcoming isometrics into nearly any strength building program, and they will absolutely correlate to an increase in strength gains. Give it a shot. Exercise number 3, dumbbell static holds for time. This exercise absolutely blew up my forearms and really helped my deadlift. Let me explain. Static holds challenge your grip like crazy. It's also a mind game, because you're not doing anything but holding heavy things at your side until the timer goes off. While strengthening your grip, static holds also engage your core a bit. It gets difficult to not let your arms track forward during the lift, and the mechanisms involved in keeping your arms at your side are all grip and core, with a tinge of the middle back, but that's not super relevant here. To perform this exercise, get some dumbbells and hold them at your side. That's really it. It's simple and it's effective. I'd recommend using a weight you can hold for 30 to 45 seconds. Hold for time, and then rest for 10 seconds. After the 10 seconds is up, hold for as long as you can, and then move on to the next exercise. Exercise number 4, power cleans. Power cleans are awesome. I don't do them enough, and out of all of the weightlifting movements, these are my favorite. Power cleans can be very technically challenging, so if you're not familiar, skip these. Or interrupt the circuit and learn how to do them. There's never a wrong time to learn an exercise, just make sure you follow a solid tutorial, record your repetitions, and assess before you start pumping the numbers. Please. Start in a deadlift position, begin the pull. Once the bar gets just below knee height, hip hinge and thrust the weight up to chest level, and catch it in a partial squat and rest it on your clavicle. As we're not super focused on hypertrophy here, let's do some strength shenanigans. Start by cleaning the empty bar 3 times, then go up in weight, clean again 3 times, go up in weight, clean again 3 times. Do this until you get to your 1 rep max, but do no more than 5 sets of cleans to get there. Hit the 1 rep max and move on. Power cleans, like the sled pull, hit almost every muscle we laid out before. They're a perfect fit into the Sisyphean circuit. Exercise number 5, push-up plank for time. The last exercise is the one I think Sisyphus would be best at. What often gets me during the push-up plank isn't the burn or the joint pain, but the process of just standing still and staring at the timer until it's over. I can deal with the burn in the core, I can deal with the aching in the wrists, but watching that timer slowly trickle down is devastatingly difficult. So you're gonna do exactly that. Set a timer for 3 or 5 minutes, depending on where you are in your training. 3 minutes can be done in one singular set or might take 15 sets. Use your discretion here. Enter the push-up plank position, press start on the timer, and do not take your eyes off of it. Watch every second go by, every minute. This mimics Sisyphus's punishment in its repetition, and while I can't make you endlessly do something, I think this is a great way to make it feel endless. Hold the plank as long as you can, and if you fall before the timer is up, pause it, rest for 10 seconds, and then plank again until the timer goes off. This is similar to a myo-rep match. That's a technique we'll get into another time, but what's important here is that you complete the 3 or 5 minutes no matter how many sets it takes, no matter how long you're there for, you just get the work done. Sisyphus continues to roll his boulder. He's immortal, but he just keeps going. Invoke the spirit of Sisyphus with your training. Embrace the suck. That's the end of the circuit. If you're crazy enough, feel free to repeat it, but you don't need to. It's not totally like traditional circuit-style training, which is definitely geared toward performing the circuit multiple times. This is a bit of a hybrid. The goal with this one was to A, be fun, and B, to gear more toward weightlifting and general fitness. You won't build a ton of muscle from training like this, but I can guarantee you'll get stronger in the realm of static strength, explosive power, and cardiovascular endurance. Plus, it's a nice mental challenge. With that, I have been your host, Benjamin Cloud. This has been the Mythic Muscle Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Have a phenomenal day, a great lift, or if it's a rest day, take a minute to just appreciate what's around you. Take care, folks. Special shout out to my newest patron, Dan Hunt. Please consider supporting me on Patreon. For only $3 a month, you get Discord access, and you buy me a protein bar. $5 a month gets you Discord access with special colors and emotes, blooper reels, a shout out from me, and transcripts of each episode. $10 a month gets you all of that noise, a vote in our monthly poll, a personalized 10-second clip of whatever you want me to say, and every dollar spent at that tier goes right back into the podcast so that I might bring you a better listening experience. Follow my socials. You can find me on pretty much every platform by searching for Mythic Muscle Podcast and looking for the helmet crossed with the barbell on the microphone. If you made it this far, you're my favorite type of human. I hope you have a wonderful day, a fantastic lift, or if it's a rest day, you get some quality relaxation time. Thank you.